So here's my sort of official video response to some of the frequently voiced criticisms that I get in my inbox, in reblogs, occasionally on Reddit, pretty much every day. So the first, which I've been seeing a lot lately, is something about how I'm a white knighting mangina. Just, for the record, I'm not a dude. I'm a woman. Also, mangina is kind of a gross and cis-sexist term, and while I suppose you're free to use it, I wouldn't really advise it. Second is something about how I'm a radical feminist, and, ew, radical feminism. As a speaker of the English language, you are kind of free to use it however you like. I'm not going to tell you otherwise or try to police your language, but do let me tell you that if you're using radical feminist to mean any feminist I've decided is too hardcore, you're going to confuse people. Similarly, if you use it to mean any feminist who subscribes to patriarchy theory, people will also be confused. Contrary to what appears to be popular belief within the Tumblr anti-feminism crowd, radical feminism does not actually have a monopoly on patriarchy. It is entirely possible to be a feminist who believes that the patriarchy do real without being a radical feminist. For what it's worth, I've actually featured some radical feminists on the blog, including Justice Badass and Kinkster Bullshit. Justice Badass's post was a really terrible analogy about PIV and Santa. The Kinkster Bullshit post was an attempted defense of transcritical feminism, which, let's be honest, isn't really a thing. Just admit that it's trans-exclusive and move on. I do intend to feature some more radical feminists, specifically, swerf and turf types. Including Anarcha Pie, who's pretty renowned at this point for being absolutely terrible, and Delicious Male Tears. One reason I haven't featured more is that their posts tend to be pretty short. As I've said in my FAQ, I really prefer posts that are at least 2 paragraphs long, or long enough to warrant 2 paragraphs if the OP is kind of a stream of consciousness type. The other reason is that I consider any posts that are sort of based on traumatic personal experience to be off limits. So while I find arguments about how all BDSM is inherently abusive to be very problematic and actually quite dangerous in a lot of ways, I'm not going to feature posts on this topic where the writer is talking about their own abuse within a BDSM community or in an abusive relationship kind of masquerading as BDSM. Even if I disagree with their conclusions, I don't see any reason to attack a post that is based on personal experience in that way. I mean, I'd prefer not to trigger anybody, and I don't want to expose them to any kind of hate. So there's that. That said, obviously, I have no problem featuring feminist posts if they're genuinely doing feminism badly. This is really just about very bad posts. The fact that I feature a lot of posts from MRAs has more to do with the fact that a lot of MRA arguments are terrible, and not so much that I'm deliberately singling MRAs out. One of the criticisms I get a lot, it's not even really a criticism, really, it's more just an attack, but something about how the fact that I spend all this time creating posts is really pathetic, and clearly I'm just a loser and I need to get a life. It doesn't take that long. I swear. Look, I've graded a lot of college essays. I can tackle a 5 to 6 page synthesis essay in about 15 minutes. It does not take me very long to do your 3 paragraph post. And it also doesn't take that much attention, honestly. Usually what happens is I go and I make some nachos and I put on a movie I've already seen before. My cousin Vinny is my personal favorite. And, you know, I grab my knitting and I sit there and I knit and I half watch a movie and I eat my nachos and I write marginal comments on your terrible post. So, really not that much of a time suck. And I do have a life, I swear. Kind of related to that, people have claimed that holding blog posts to an academic standard is unfair. I agree. That would be unfair. So it's a really good thing that that's not actually what I'm doing, right? I mean, really think about these posts. Would you actually turn them in as an assignment to a teacher? With possibly a couple exceptions, I hope very much that you would say no. And let me tell you that if you did, it is highly likely that your teacher would simply hand you back the paper with no grade. So the very fact that I am grading posts that would never be graded in an academic setting suggests that I am not, in fact, holding them to an academic standard. But if you actually look at my commentary and my grades on these various posts, you can see the kind of standard that I'm holding them to. So, for example, it's very common for me to give good faith research points when I suspect that somebody has done research and simply hasn't incorporated it into their argument. If you got good faith research points on an academic essay, let me tell you, your teacher is terrible and they should be fired. And, you know, that's never going to happen. So that's an example of how I'm holding it to a lower standard. Another example would be like citations. I think that you should source your claims, especially if you're using statistics, but it's not like I'm docking points for not having it cited in MLA, right? I really don't care how you cite it as long as you do something. The one exception to that would be cases where I suspect that the writer has sourced their claims in such a way as to be disingenuous. So, for example, that infamous permutation of ninjas post, right? They made a statistical claim. They linked to a study that was over 100 pages long and gave no idea of where to find the relevant information, and in the process, they were misrepresenting the data in the study. I suspect bad motives of that, and so then I am likely to maybe dock a few points. But otherwise, I really don't care. Just give some kind of evidence of what you're saying. So no, I am not holding blog posts to an academic standard. I am imposing a rubric on blog posts, but it's not especially rigorous. And, I mean, ultimately, I'm not really doing anything much different from other anti-bigotry blogs. It's just that I've got a different kind of gimmick. So the method is different, but the content is more or less the same. Then there's my favorite complaint, which is, oh, well, have you ever thought that maybe, like, you're the bigot? Yes, you're right. My intolerance of other people's intolerance somehow constitutes bigotry. But seriously, if you think that I'm the bigot here, have you actually read the post that I'm featuring? I mean, it's one thing if you disagree with some of my kind of counter-arguments or certain claims that I'm making, or if you think that I'm misrepresenting data or something. I'm perfectly happy to address any of those types of complaints. I've changed my mind in a few cases when I've talked with other followers, or even people I've bigotized. But if you're trying to sort of defend these posts, like, as a whole, I implore you to go back and actually read them, with my commentary, without my commentary, whatever. It really doesn't matter, but the point is that I am deliberately seeking out posts that are especially bigoted and or badly argued. I've featured, like, British nationalists who link to American Renaissance as a source. If you've never encountered American Renaissance, I highly suggest going to the Southern Poverty Law Center webpage and typing them in. You'll get interesting information. I think the leader of American Renaissance is Jared Taylor, so you could also look that guy up. So, no, I'm I'm not the bigot here. If you think I'm stubborn about certain things, I mean, that's one thing, and again, I am perfectly happy to discuss certain points. But I really not finding that argument terribly persuasive. Then there's, the people who are all, ooh, I thought you were going to have my post up tomorrow, -5 points for tardiness. I get that it's a joke. It was, kind of funny the first time I heard it. But just so you know, it is not uncommon for me to make posts saying that I'll have something up tomorrow and then actually getting it up 3 days later. No particular reason for that, really, except that a lot of things take priority over my unpaid blogging, including, paid work, napping, eating, grocery shopping, knitting, loading the dishwasher, a bunch of things. I love running this blog. It's a lot of fun. But sometimes it just takes a backseat to everything else that's kind of going on. So, if I make a post saying I'm going to have your post up, I will. It just will be within the week, and there's a fairly decent chance it will not, in fact, be when I say it will. And then, finally, that was just me ranting on my blog. What the hell? Why would you debigitize that? No. First of all, it is very rare for me to feature a post that was not liberally tagged. So, for example, many of the anti-feminist posts I do are tagged with feminism, anti-feminism, MRA, rape culture, patriarchy. They are posts that the OP wanted people to see. Alright, I don't care if you were ranting. Clearly you wanted people to see this post. And then, some people did, and you got criticism for it, and now you're trying to deflect criticism by saying that, that was just ranting, or that was just a joke, or whatever. You're not fooling anybody. You're really not. And you know what? Even if you were just ranting, you should still be able to defend your ranting. If you can't, then you probably need to sit down and rethink your life, or at the very least, rethink your thinking. So, yeah, don't have a lot of sympathy for that argument either. Yeah. No, I think those are the major kind of frequently voiced criticisms. If I left anything out, by all means let me know, and I will address it later on. Thanks. Have a good day.